talk about the concept of suffering in order to understand some of the next things that we're going to talk about. In many mantras, prayers, meditations, readings, you hear the word suffering, and you want to ease somebody's suffering, or you're praying for the end of somebody's suffering and the causes of their suffering. So having a concept of the suffering that we're talking about is helpful in understanding just what it is, what your intention is behind the prayer. So, when talking about suffering, it's not just physical pain. So, you do want their pain to end. If they've hurt themselves, if they have an injury, if they have a disease, yes, you pray for the end of that, or you hope for healing of that, but also emotional pain, psychological pain, a mental illness, perhaps, but also things that cause one suffering are not necessarily disease as we know it, but also envy. Being so jealous of somebody else's stuff that it causes you suffering in that you can't be content and happy with what you have. So that kind of suffering as well. Where, so Hollywood has set us up to never be able to attain that kind of romance, that kind of relationship. Jeremy, you're never going to be Chris Pratt. I know, right? So there's your suffering. You'll never be able to be that guy. But that's the thing, right? So people who have seen so many of these romance movies, these rom-coms, that you're never satisfied with the way that your relationship starts, the way that you got engaged with, or, the way that your boyfriend or girlfriend is treating you or whatever. That's a kind of suffering as well. So when we talk about hoping to ease somebody's suffering, it's those things too. Hoping for them to be content with what they have. Now, also part of easing somebody's suffering is also perhaps hoping that they can see maybe a positive from a form of suffering. So, for example, I'll just take a personal example with my mother dying. I'm taking that as a way to talk more openly about mental illness, about dementia and Alzheimer's, sharing my story as a way of my own easing of my suffering and perhaps helping somebody else who might be in a similar situation. So I can't get rid of it, but I can ease it. And therein lies the difference, and see it from a different perspective. So, the reason why I wanted to bring that up is the next part. So in The Fearless Heart, and many other books, they talk about a form of meditation called loving kindness. Another word for that is metta, M-E-T-T-A. And that's also, loving kindness is also sort of the definition of compassion. And in the metta meditation, you typically, and there are many different ways of going through this meditation, and many different orders in which you do it, but typically you start with focusing on somebody or something, a being that just by thinking about this person brings you joy. Because it's easy for you to feel compassion for somebody that you already care about. So for example, I just can't help but smile when I think of my cat, Sarah. Right? So it's easy for me to think about her and then practice loving kindness meditation. So in the meditation, there's typically several lines that you're saying, and everybody's interpretation So one that I'm reading from the Center of Mindfulness Studies, it's similar but different from the few lines that he writes about in A Fearless Heart. So for example, in this, may you be safe, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. The reason why I brought up suffering is that typically the last line of that is, may you be free from suffering, or may you be free from suffering and its causes. So, hoping for somebody to live with ease is another way of hoping to end their suffering. So you pick several lines that covers all the bases in making sure that this person is well. Health, maybe perhaps that they live with joy, that they end their suffering, whatever that is. So whatever the suffering may be for that person. And you don't even have to define what it is. You're just projecting out, you're thinking of that person so strongly that you see them in your mind's eye. You feel your heart reaching out to that person as if literally there's this physical connection between your heart and theirs, and you're just pouring all of this and saying to them, I want you to be happy and healthy and safe and free from suffering. And then, so you have this set of lines that you always say. So then you move from somebody that you easily feel compassion for, and then you switch your meditation and you think about perhaps somebody that has sort of like no emotion for you. Like what I said last week, the guy at the bagel store, why wouldn't I want him to be okay? I have, even if I didn't like him very much, I shouldn't have any ill will for the guy. So then I think about him, and I meditate on him, and I show compassion towards him. And perhaps it feels a little bit different because I don't know him. I don't know what his suffering is. But that's exactly it. That's the point, is I don't need to know any details. I just look at another human being and I'm like, well, of course, I want them to be all these things. Why would I not? And then you move your practice to yourself. And so some of these things, some of these steps are simply because it just makes sense to do these things, but also they're sort of stepping up for you to practice self-compassion, which is challenging. And so then you say to yourself, and you try to, and if this is hard for you, and we were just talking about here, so this is where we're going to come up to talking about the self-compassion test. For some people, self-compassion is the hardest version of this. Because honestly saying to yourself, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be healthy, may I be free from suffering and its causes. Because maybe you feel like you don't deserve that. Maybe you feel like, you haven't worked hard enough to be free from these things. Maybe, whatever all of your excuses are. So one way to practice this is to say these words about yourself and remember what it was like to feel the practice that you did for that person that you truly love and care about, right? So you practice that feeling of compassion. So when I think about like my grandma and think about, were she still alive? Yes, I would want all of these things for her. Well, why should I feel any less about myself than my grandmother? And so then I feel those feelings. So I imagine, so literally when I think of my grandmother, I can feel like some tingling in my shoulders and my neck, and I feel this sort of like fullness, not a heavy heart, like this fullness in my heart. And then, so I try to replace her face with mine and hold that and say to myself the same things that I said for my grandmother or for some other person that I love. So then you practice that and you try to say it as sincerely as possible. And with this one, perhaps you have to say it many times before you honestly believe the things that you're saying. That I do deserve to be safe and to be healthy and to be free from suffering. And say those things until you mean it, and until you really mean it when you say it. And then perhaps next, you can pick somebody that is a challenge for you, that you feel the opposite of love for. And in the practice of loving compassion, loving kindness for somebody that makes you feel less than loving, I don't like using the word hate. It's a very harsh word. I've said this before, like there are very few things that I hate. And the things that I do hate, I think are deserving of hate. I hate the Ku Klux Klan. I hate people that hurt children, and I hate people that hurt animals. However, those are things in people that I should practice loving kindness, compassion towards in meditation. Because there's a reason why those people are the way that they are. And it's like, hate the game, not the player. And truly, the answer to all of my deep-seated, those harsh feelings is, number one, wouldn't it be best if, who is the old grand dragon of the planet? David, whatever his name is. Yes, David Duke. Wouldn't it be fantastic if he actually didn't have those terrible feelings? That he hadn't been all of that? Yes, that would be better. Wouldn't it be better if this person who had been terrible to children, wouldn't it be better if the things that made that person do those awful things, if that cause of that suffering was gone off of that person? Wouldn't it be better? And the answer is yes. And so my prayer is truly to wish for a person that, in my mind, does awful things. That they are free from suffering. I do want them to be healthy, because one version of healthy is mentally healthy. I do want them to be safe, because perhaps part of whatever makes them do these awful things is because they have an insecurity of some sort. For example, somebody who doesn't live in a safe neighborhood, I'm hopping away from pedophiles for a second, somebody who lives in an unsafe neighborhood perhaps takes too many risks, maybe does have some violent tendencies because that's what they've been around. So if they feel safe, if they are healthy, what are some of the other ones? May you be peaceful, and may you live in ease and free from suffering, then yes, that would be wonderful all around. I cannot honestly say that even a person that I feel so much disdain for, if I were to take a step back from the feeling itself that I have for the things that they've done, I can't honestly say that I wouldn't want these things for that person. So that's very hard, but it's hard for a different reason, right? Because you're looking at the truth of things. And here's the other thing. This doesn't mean that I have to like the person. Feeling compassion for somebody doesn't mean that you actually do have to, in fact, love them. You don't have to be near them. And in fact, it's probably best for me personally to not be near and around somebody that I have really hard feelings for. But part of this loving kindness meditation not only is to potentially send loving kindness feelings to this person, but also to help ease that feeling, if it truly is hate, for the few things that I hate. If I can truly ease that from my heart, because that's not healthy for me to have that heart burden. Right? And it's similar to going through the loving kindness meditation. It's similar in a way to what we talked about last week of, I think it's pronounced Naikan, Naikan, where you go through at the end of the day and you say, how did I help others, but how did I, actually not help somebody? How did I cause suffering for others? and just thinking about the way that you impact other people's lives. So it's an interesting exercise for me to practice these compassion meditations, whether it's a written meditation. And this one, the loving kindness meditation, can be sitting there visualizing and literally saying it out loud, or thinking it to yourself, or writing it down. And in fact, in this book, it is sitting for 20 to 40 minutes at the end of the day, writing this out. May you be safe, may you be peaceful, and you're thinking about the person, and you're writing this out. So I would say that whatever is best for you, whatever really makes you feel like it's really getting in there and working. But I do think that these are interesting exercises because it helps you sort of shift perspective. Thinking about a wonderful person, thinking about, I don't wish anybody ill will, but, thinking about meditating, loving thoughts for somebody that, I don't know, that guy across the street, I don't even know his name. But then also shifting your perspective on somebody that is a challenge for you. And in the same way with that Naikan exercise, thinking about how what I do impacts other people, even if I had the best intentions. For example, my quarter, when I swapped the quarter for the little girl's cart at Aldi and made them cry. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm still working on getting over that. Apparently, so last time Aaron and I went to Aldi, we walked up with a quarter, these two little girls were pushing the cart to the thing, and I'm like, hey, I'll trade ya. And they're like, okay. And I traded them a quarter, and when we were walking in, I heard them start to cry, and I'm like, what the hell did I do? And Aaron's like, they probably wanted to do the clicky thing and get the quarter for themselves. Like, I didn't even think of that. So then in thinking about the suffering that I caused the little girl suffering, and that mom had to handle these little girls crying all the way home, and whatever else. So anyway, those little things where you recognize that you do have an impact.
You got a lot of work to do.
What did that about your car then?
Right, and then on top, so then what happened is, the next morning, I walk out, and my car had been broken into, and the only thing they stole was my Aldi quarter. That's it. It took my quarter.
Were they busted the window or what?
No, I'm not sure if Aaron didn't lock the car when he went to get something out of my car. And so, no, they didn't have to bust anything. Absolutely nothing was ruined. They rifled through my stuff. I leave nothing in my car because I don't have anything to leave in there. And they didn't want, actually, my Star Wars hat. Yeah, so literally all they took was that Aldi quarter that...
So it was the next day, but that night or?
Literally, it was the next day. Somebody broke into my car that night and took my Aldi quarter.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think you're good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all.
Yeah, I think it's been resolved, yes. But lesson learned, let the kids do the quarter thing at Aldi. They like it. Yeah, didn't know. Okay, so any thoughts or comments about the loving kindness meditation? Have you ever practiced it?
Friday night.
Did you?
James.
Did you guys write it out or you thought it?
He spoke it.
Yeah. And so what were the words, what were the phrases, do you remember what the phrases were? Similar, yeah. Yeah. Most of them are somewhat similar because also you kind of want to have nice short phrases that are easy to remember. Like you just think the order of it and then you're saying it about different people. So then, what was the order of the way that he had you meditate on different people? Somebody that you cared about and then?
Cared about, then myself and then someone that you don't know.
Okay, somebody neutral. Yeah.
But I just remember it went on for maybe about 20 minutes and it was just so healing.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it was like, it felt good.
Yeah. And I mean, can you describe in what way that felt healing to you?
It sounds selfish, but it gave me purpose.
Yeah.
I felt like I had done something to benefit others.
Yeah. it's a really interesting meditation, and I think if somebody's not guiding you, then having like a little thing written down, like what the words are, is helpful. And again, all of them are similar. Did you try the Naikan thing?
Not formally in a journal, but I've been very much aware,
Yeah.
especially to the part of what, remember I said, what if you don't really do anything that's too mean or nasty?
You don't know.
Yeah. So
Right.
there's been many times that I've realized I've affected someone.
Yeah. And so I think if I remember correctly, so the three things were, what did you do? What did somebody do for you? What have you done for somebody? And how did you cause somebody suffering? And it's real easy for me to think about what I think I gave somebody. Like, what did I give somebody? Well, I'm amazing. So, that's sort of the thing with that. But then you think about, what has somebody given to me? And then, but you need to be really specific about it and think about, well, it's not the gift itself, it's the intention behind it. Like, for example, nearly every night that I come home, Aaron makes me dinner. Aaron makes us dinner, but very specifically, he puts a lot of thought and intention behind the dinner because of all of my weird food choices. And so he's very mindful, and so he's got, he wants to make sure that I'm eating well for running, but also that it's not too high in carbs, and that, he doesn't automatically assume that I want a tortilla, all of these things. And so it's not just, oh, I'm thankful that Aaron made me dinner. It's all the stuff that he actually, the intention behind it. It's not just the dinner, it's truly what he put into it. So, and that, I think, truly helps you to feel grateful, but then also to think about, for a flip side, what if somebody gave you something that you're like, they just gave me this, and you don't appreciate it? So there's a difference. Like, some people might do something for you that you don't think was good enough. Well, put some thought into perhaps what the person's intention really was. Did they really have a bad intention? Or are you thinking of it maybe in a different way? Kind of like the idea that people love differently. People communicate differently. It's like misunderstood intention in a text message or an email versus a phone call. So, giving you a moment to think about truly, a bigger picture about things. Okay, self-compassion test. Jeremy, did you ever take the self-compassion test? No, okay. What's that? So I just today posted the video from last week, and so number one, the link for the self-compassion test I did post it on Facebook, but also on the Patreon page for Yoga Happiness for last week's video has a link to this as well as the Patreon page has links to all the videos we talked about, all my favorite TED Talks for compassion, the Naikan test, all sorts of things. So anyway, this is on there. Take the self-compassion test, that's the name of the link, on the website for the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, centerformsc.org. They have a ton of stuff on there. The self-compassion test, I'm going to flip to the back to describe this here. So they've got 26 questions. Each of these questions, or the questions are broken out into different categories: self-kindness, self-judgment, common humanity, isolation, mindfulness, over-identification, and then you get an overall score. They say that the overall self-compassion scores tend 3 on the 1 to 5 scale. So if you can interpret your overall scale accordingly, as a rough guide, a score of 1 to 2.5 for your overall compassion score indicates you are low in self-compassion. 2.5 to 3.5 indicates you're moderate. 3.5 to 5 means you're high on the self-compassion scale. Remember that higher scores for self-judgment, isolation, and over-identification indicate less self-compassion, while lower scores on the other dimensions are higher, indicate more self-compassion. So, I'm going to just say right off the bat, my overall score was 3.23, so I am average. What was yours?
1.71. I'm going to take it again.
What?
Studying more this time.
Yeah, studying more.
Tonight.
Now that you know. Well, so for example, the questions give an option of 1 to 5. Almost never, occasionally, about half of the time, fairly often, almost always. These are your options. Number 1, I'm disapproving and judgmental about my own flaws and inadequacies. When I'm feeling down, I tend to obsess and fixate on everything that's wrong. When things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through. So, with 26 questions, some of these questions are worded slightly differently. Did you kind of catch on to that? That just a little bit of a difference in the way that they describe it changes something from like self-judgment, self-kindness to self-judgment. It changes it from common humanity to isolation, or from mindfulness to over-identification. So let's see here. Let me try to find one. I try to see my failings as part of the human condition. When I see aspects of myself that I don't like, I get down on myself. When I fail at something important to me, I try to keep things in perspective. When I'm really struggling, I tend to feel like other people around me are having an easier time of it. So some of these things, you might feel like, oh, they're asking the same question. But they're not. It's just a little bit different. For me, so I think that there were some things that initially my first answer would have been different, and then I would think about, for example, if I were to read this out loud with Aaron sitting next to me, he'd be like, you want to think about that again?
That's good.
Because I do, one of the things that I certainly do frequently, I don't know if I said it frequently, fairly often, yeah. When something painful happens, I try to take a balanced view of the situation. That I do actually fairly often. But about half, this is where I probably could have gone a little bit higher. When I see aspects of myself that I don't like, I get down on myself. I said about half the time, and that's probably not entirely accurate. Pretty sure it's more the time. Although, one of the questions that I was actually very honest about, I'm kind to myself when I'm experiencing suffering. I actually do that. I do recognize, and it's because of yoga. It's because of my yoga practice that and it's probably only just been in the past 5 years, that when I recognize that I'm overwhelmed, things aren't going very well, I have a migraine, and so I'm not going to be at my peak performance, I do step back and take a break, because I have learned take a step back. So it's important to recognize when you need to take a break. So at least I'm good with that one. So Marianne, what were your thoughts and feelings on this?
Well, I took it last night, and I had some disappointment prior to that.
Okay.
That I was reactionary to the disappointment. And so then I took this. I just didn't have any time to calm down and meditate.
Yeah.
So today I just sat with the disappointment.
Yeah.
And sat with kind of my self-judgment.
Yeah.
And put on music and decided to belt out some songs and try to be more nurturing and healing to myself. So timing-wise, this maybe was a little skewed because of the disappointment and my reaction to the disappointment.
So when you were taking the test, did you recognize then that this probably wasn't a fair time for you to take it? Did you know at the time?
Well, I wanted to do it because I felt like I had some homework to do.
I see.
So again, I wanted to kind of punish myself in a way.
Yeah.
Homework's not pleasant.
Yeah.
So I took it once, and I saw the button that said submit, but I pressed the other button that said cancel or something.
Yeah, great.
So I retook the test.
Yeah.
And so I think even that time I had to be harsher on myself, like, why didn't you hit submit? Now look at all this time you wasted. It really gonna go back. So
Yeah.
it's getting more touchy in my responses, I think. But it was a good. I do think I'll come back to it actually.
Yeah.
At some point and use it as a piece of reflection.
Yeah.
So do they have statistics, associated with people who have taken this test, like, as far as like differences, over time, or differences within age groups or genders or anything like that? I would be really interested.
If they do, I haven't looked for those.
Okay.
Did you see anything like that on the website?
It's an extensive site. That
Yeah.
would be worth looking at.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, but I don't know.
Do you fill out any kind of, like, when you're filling it out, like what your age is, what your,
Nope.
so they don't have any of that, they didn't
Nope.
take any of that information?
You don't even create a login.
Okay,
Yeah, you just take it.
okay. So they wouldn't then have that kind of.
Well, I don't know because, they might, because I believe that they've done a lot of other studies.
Okay.
So they might have done a study on it. I am interested in this because, I can't remember if it was a website or what it is. Maybe it was a book that I read. The difference in men versus women. Adult men versus women, and the way that they answer these questions generally are a lot different. However, what I don't know is, for example, if a person may be coming to it and answering questions from what they think they should say versus what they truly feel. And I think that anytime you're coming into something, you always want to be truthful, right? But coming into something and recognizing that your first inclination to answer the question may not be the truest answer. There are certain tests that you take where you need to go with like your knee-jerk response to it, and that's truly what this is. But some of these things, like, this is the one that I had to think twice about. When something painful happens, I tend to blow the incident out of proportion. I could occasionally. Oh no, I blow things out of proportion quite a hard to be honest about because I want to be better than this. I want to be self-compassionate. I'd like to think that these things are true. But then, it's probably not. I probably need to think a little bit further about this. When I'm down and out, I remind myself that there are lots of people in the world feeling like I am. So trying to put some things into perspective, I don't know. I think that having some kind of yoga, meditation, mindfulness practice as your base in life helps with, and maybe I'm stating the obvious, but helps with your responses in what life gives you as it pertains to how you might, eventually answer these questions. I don't know that the way that I was raised necessarily gave me the tools to not be judgmental about myself. I was raised to believe that I was an angel and amazing because I was the first grandchild, the only granddaughter, and the only daughter of my mom, or the only child of my mom. So I'm the center of the universe, but that doesn't mean that I'm not judgmental about myself. So I do think that a lot of it, I think that if I were to have taken this at age 10, age 13, 18, if I were to have taken something like this at different points in my life, big differences.
Sure.
Big differences overall. And I think that something like this, so we were talking earlier in the book Fearless Heart, he talks about how compassion should be taught in schools. That it should be taught in schools from an early age. And the concept of thinking outside of yourself, recognizing how you make an impact on the world, and compassion for others, but also compassion for yourself. Absolutely, all these things should be taught to people. Not only because it makes you a better human being and it helps you be, I think, a better citizen and citizen of your neighborhood, but also a citizen of the world. But I also think it helps give you the tools to be better to yourself. And I can't even imagine being a kid growing up these days with the internet. It was hard enough to be a teenage girl just without the internet and cell phones and all of that. And the 80s were pretty good to me, but with all of this extra stuff that kids have to deal with, having an understanding of compassion for yourself at an early age so that you have that tool already there, like some key words that you can think of when something harsh happens to you, when somebody calls you a name or says something really hurtful or does something really hurtful, and not just like going to your happy place, which I think is whatever. I'm not going to make a judgment on whether or not that's helpful, but truly thinking something honest and supportive of yourself is a good tool to have that I think not a lot of kids have.
I it's just not modern. It's just not the prevailing notion out there in the culture right now. I mean, just the reality TV shows and whatnot are just not models at all of compassion and so yeah, I think it would be really challenging. You know, as a kid these days, and I know in raising two kids, trying to model that all the time, trying to ask those questions, get angry about somebody who did something, or even, the discussion about my son, just like, can't stand Donald Trump, I have my own hang-ups, right?
Right.
but what does that, it's okay, I guess, to be angry and be upset with the things that are happening and policies that he's taking, whatever, but to be, still coming from a place of compassion, and starting from there, but still allowing there to be space to, okay, all right, he's another human being, he's whatever, a child of God, whatever you want to how you want to characterize it, but you don't have to, like you said earlier, I hate the game and not the player kind of thing, it's just like, but there's just so much in opposition to that. It's like continuously be like mindful and reminding of that and just okay.
And the nice thing about, I think the one positive about that example is that there is in fact something that you can do about it. You can vote.
Right.
So that is not a situation where we're out of control. I mean, it's going to take a while, but
right, there are things you can do.
yeah.
But yeah, I whenever the kids are saying something like, I hate this, that's a really strong word.
Right.
And I mean, you might be upset with what they're doing, you might be happy with it, I understand that, but and they've gotten to the point now where they're just like, okay, I know you don't like that word. I know you hate that word, okay? So they back off that, but yeah, it's but that's just what we see out there. It's like everybody's screaming to be heard. I mean, that's what it is on YouTube, the internet, everywhere. There's so many platforms, social media and everything, that there's not enough capacity for us to absorb it all.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to be loud and audacious.
So yeah, you have to just be so loud and obnoxious just to get heard.
Get the likes
and it's just like it's an arms race where it just keeps elevating, and it's just like I just came back from a few days in Las Vegas, and I just my brain hurt, from the sounds and and it wasn't like people were shouting at me necessarily and telling me what to do or whatever, but there was all these things that were vying for my attention. And I just, after a while, I was just like, I needed to stop, I was like, and it was just like, even, in the middle of the night in the hotel room, like 3 in the morning, I'm still hearing stuff, going on out on the strip or whatever, and it's just like, stop it, so yeah, there's just so much noise out there for kids these days, and to be able to the message of compassion and loving kindness, man, where are they hearing that, and it's just like, there's not a lot of places,
And what's unfortunate to me is that one of the things that we joke about, but the internet is made for cat pictures and things like that. So there is a market for a feeling of compassion, or else, Facebook pages like Cuddle Puddle haven't seen Cuddle Puddle, go to it. Oh my God, like the cutest animal pictures ever. They'll make you die daily. But that's the thing, like, there is a market for compassion. I just wish that people would do more of it.
Well, maybe a lot of this screaming, attention, look at me kind of thing is just really a symptom of the fact that folks aren't feeling the compassion and love that they need. Okay, and so there's like, hey, look at me, I'm special kind of thing. And so, so it's, if people really felt secure in what they were doing or in themselves or confident and all that kind of stuff, they're not needing to like, go out and like, do all these, jump through these hoops or whatever,
Right.
Fire or whatever, they're like,
Right.
kind of thing. So yeah, I think, right, there is like a really strong thirst out there or need for more compassion. So how do you get that there?
Yeah, I do that.
So, I guess we started, obviously, your own daily life, daily interactions, doing things like this, love and kindness meditation, and it started from there. But sometimes it's just really overwhelming looking at how much loving kindness the world needs,
Yeah. Well, and every moment gives you the opportunity of doing that. For example, just seeing somebody on the street, and instead of not making eye contact, just make eye contact and just say hi. How many times I've tried to pass somebody and say hi, but we have this culture, I don't know when it happened, where and I pass people that aren't even on their cell phone, that they don't even look up and acknowledge my existence. I literally could have pushed them into the street. Thankfully, they trust me enough not to, because I wouldn't do that. But, just look at somebody in the eye, say hello, you need not do anything else, and just acknowledging that they exist. And that can mean all the difference to somebody, especially in these days of internet and texting and all these things where, that's at least some human contact. There's just eye contact. Well, we've gobbled up an hour. This is why, we've got 2 more weeks of talking about compassion, so we certainly will. If you get the opportunity, take the self-compassion test again, take it, see what you get. Let's talk about it again next week, and I'll be bringing some more compassion exercises that perhaps we'll do during the discussion, and keep going. Great, excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please click like or subscribe. Also, don't forget about checking out the Patreon page, patreon.com/yoga happiness. I typically have more content, more background information, links to other things that you can do and look at, and it's more of a comprehensive, inclusive package if you go to the Patreon page. And talking about Patreon, I want to thank my supporters. It's growing every week, and I'm so thrilled. I can't even speak, apparently. Thank you to Chris and Nancy, Lauren, Athne, Vince, and Jeremy. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support. You're helping me keep going, doing these things. It's nice to know that people are watching and enjoying these videos and talks and hikes and so forth. We've got new things coming up, so I'm really excited. And I can't talk about it just yet, but there are new things coming up, and I will tell you guys all about that when I can. I'm so bad at keeping secrets. Anyway, have a great rest of your week. I'll talk to you next time.